You guys probably remember me talking about this recently. This is Robinhood submitting an SEC proposal to regulate tokenized real-world assets, aiming to bring Wall Street on chain and unlock a $30 trillion market. Now, we talked about this with XRP as well, because we know that there's so many connections between Robinhood and also Ripple and even XRP. But what if I told you that Ondo and XRP are already trying to bring Wall Street on chain? This is something that a lot of people are actually not aware of, but we need to really kind of focus on some of these additional projects like Ondo, because Ondo is working with Ripple and Ondo already is fully focused on the Wall Street 2.0 push. For an example, if we go all the way back to February of this year, they put out this article on their website and it was titled Wall Street 2.0 Towards the Open Economy. Now, this is actually addressing a lot of those inefficiencies that plague traditional markets. And, we always think about finance in terms of just payments like cross-border payments, remittances. But what about the stock market, right? Because a lot of these markets are completely limited. And the stock market itself is plagued by those same inefficiencies, if not even more. So when we are thinking about that, right, we immediately look at all of the big banks. We look at all of the big players tied to the entire life cycle around, stock markets. And when we were thinking about that, we could kind of see the big problem, right? There's a ton of middlemen. There's a lot of constrictions, and Ondo is trying to fix all of this. In fact, Ondo is working with some of the big players already to make this a reality. Okay, now we know stablecoins will be a part of this. We know that tokenization will be a part of this. And what's crazy about this is, like I said, Ondo is already working with some very prominent names like BlackRock, for example, on making sure that this becomes a reality. Where we do see here, welcome to Wall Street 2.0, the industry finds itself at a pivotal moment. Stablecoins have become, a tremendous success with over $210 billion worth in circulation today. It's now over 232 billion, I think. DeFi has flourished, providing significant utility for digital assets. User adoption has surged, driving demand for digital assets that can serve as both stable stores of value and sources of yield. Yield coins have demonstrated substantial growth and are poised, we think, to take substantial market share from traditional stablecoins. Large traditional asset managers are beginning to bring their assets on chain. Yet, despite this progress, the current investing experience for so many around the world is still broken, and that's why we look at institutional grade RWAs. And this is where we start to see everything change. Now, this is where we see the Wall Street focus being addressed here, right? We have, the origins of 1792. And we also have the focus of the, 1800s, the 1970s, and then the 1990s, which, you could argue was like kind of the last major innovative time frame for some of these markets. I mean, most things are still stuck in the 90s, if not even older decades prior. And what's crazy about this is now is the best time to upgrade these systems because we have the tech in front of us. And here we actually have Wall Street 2.0 represents the next evolution of financial markets, where traditional systems converge with blockchain technology to create a more accessible, efficient, and inclusive ecosystem. So how is this happening, right? Like, what's going on here? What is Ondo doing? Well, Ondo already has specific markets tied to it. In fact, Ondo already has so many networks tied to it as well. But also, when we think about the names tied back to Ondo, they already have some very big players that are working with them. And also, by the way, they have a platform that already involves tokenized things like, for example, stocks or even treasuries. And they're absolutely killing the game right now. And if we actually go over to Ondo's website, we could see some of the traditional names that are already tapped in. For example, Wellington Management, Franklin Templeton, Ripple's also a partner of them, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock. I mean, guys, this is definitely a very big player that you want to keep a close eye on. And I do believe that we are going to see specific players like Ondo become pillars for this new, Wall Street push, essentially. Now, when we think about that, we also have over here, this is that platform that I was talking about, global markets. This will bring stocks and ETFs from NYSE and NASDAQ on chain. They will be accessible 24/7, eligible for margin, composable with DeFi. Whether you're an individual user or a platform developer, Ondo Global Markets brings tokenized equities directly to your fingertips. Now, this is just one piece that Ondo has tied to it, okay? We also know that they continue to add more names to their platform and to their ecosystem. Like we just talked about BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, Franklin Templeton, right? These major asset management companies and, big players, but also big banks. Kinexys by JP Morgan, Ondo Finance, and Chainlink are teaming up to connect bank settlement infrastructure to Ondo chain. This is huge, okay? We also have down here that this milestone marks the first use of Ondo chain's infrastructure and is a first of its kind cross-chain atomic delivery versus payment settlement of a tokenized asset between Kinexys digital payments permission blockchain network and a layer 1 blockchain network Ondo chain via Chainlink's cross-chain orchestration infrastructure. So this is huge, and this is going to scale the tokenization of RWAs. This is going to bring institutional players in a huge way. And it's also going to tap in one of the largest banks in the world. This is showing us that TradFi and DeFi are converging at a massive rate. Now, why do I think that this is big for XRP as well? Well, because again, when we are thinking about what's going on here, we think about the ecosystem around Ondo. Back in January, we did see that Ondo Finance expanded their institutional reach with OUSG, which is, by the way, the same asset being utilized here. This is OUSG, and this is actually their deployment on the XRP ledger. Now, you might think, all right, well, this doesn't really matter, right? Like this is just an asset being tapped in and, being integrated onto the XRP ledger. You could look at it like that, right? 100%. Or you could think about the fact that we are now seeing a bridge being created here, which is going to expand, the overall institutional side of the XRP ledger. And we also now have all of the benefits that the XRP ledger does provide tied to OUSG, which they are also saying here. This is going to tap in institutional grade security, accessible settlement and liquidity, institutional grade infrastructure for, tokenized RWAs, supporting institutional grade DeFi. This is huge. This partnership is huge for the XRPL. It's huge for even Ripple's view because they want to really kind of focus on institutional DeFi in a big way. And now we're starting to see Ondo become an even bigger piece of the puzzle around TradFi moving on chain. And we already know that they're pushing for Wall Street 2.0, and it seems as though they're becoming very successful around that push. Now, on top of that, we also go over here. This is the first time ever that you can go 24/7, 365 from a tokenized bank deposit to a tokenized treasury, because again, that's exactly what this does. Listen closely to what's being talked about here.
Yeah, we're very excited to announce that we completed a transaction where an investor using tokenized deposit on JP Morgan's permission blockchain ledger was able to subscribe atomically to a tokenized treasuries product OUSG on Ondo chain on the first real testnet transaction for Ondo chain. And so this is the first time ever that you can go 24/7, 365 from a tokenized bank deposit to a tokenized treasury. And it really starts to break down the barriers between the innovation that's been happening in the public blockchain ecosystem with what the banks like JP Morgan have been doing for a long time in the space.
So yeah, this is the start of, these big banks. And we already know the Wall Street giants are tied into Ondo as well. Everything is moving on chain through these specific infrastructure players. Ondo is a pillar around this. And the fact that we have that connection with, the XRPL is a huge step already made to support the XRPL in a big way. But also, don't forget USDY, which is also now supported via Zodiac custody with OUSG support coming soon, bringing yield-bearing tokenized US treasuries to institutional balance sheets. This just got announced on May 29th. Why is this important? Well, because Standard Chartered's backed Zodiac custody already partnered up with Ripple. Well, this is basically Ripple custody because it was Medico. So this is Ripple custody being tapped in here back in 2023. Again, the connections are very clear. And I do think that this is also why Ripple put out this. If it's happening on chain, it's happening with Ripple. Find out how blockchain is changing finance. And if you guys know, I did include this in that video where I was talking about Robinhood, because we have the Wall Street bull here. We know that everything is moving on chain, finance is moving on chain. So why wouldn't Wall Street move on chain as well? And, we have the clock here. We have Wall Street on the left side with Broad Street as well. Again, when we think about these players, Ripple and Ondo are two very significant names in this space that have very significant institutional grade access. They have major institutional players tapped in, Wall Street players as well. And the fact that we have this partnership, like, this is huge for institutional reach of the XRPL. And now with this major move with JP Morgan and Chainlink, I do suspect that we're going to start to see an accelerated push from Ondo with additional banks tapped in, with additional asset management companies tapped in as well. And this is going to accelerate the tokenization revolution. And I do think that this is also going to support XRP and XRPL in a big way. We know Ripple is fully tapped in a big way around tokenization from the institutional side, because they want to enable institutional DeFi initiatives through tokenization. And I do suspect that, this is just one of many, many more announcements that we're going to see going forward this year. Tokenization is becoming a much bigger piece of the traditional financial system. We also know that stablecoins are also becoming a big piece here, because OUSG, you got to remember, like, this is basically a stablecoin. So when we think about what's going on here, I want you guys to realize the revolution is not, coming. It's here. It's happening. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, notifications on, because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.